calling me out if you feel this me out. I'm not gonna take offense.
What is the most damage? Slip over.
You fresh.
Really?
I mean,
Yes, you just called her slowpoke. It's alright.
That's true. We were on the podcast and talked about it, and yours, right? You.
Yeah, but
Big two. We were on the podcast.
I thought I had the best one.
yeah, right.
It's probably the way that you talk and the way that you put your words together, but I definitely understood what you were saying. I just never seen a school for hair extensions.
Not just that. You just.
Yeah, I'm not glad.
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't know what to say the whole show, bro. But you're funny. I'll give you that.
You guys hurt her feelings.
But hold on, don't worry.
I didn't mean to hurt your feelings.
There's somebody out there that understands you. Okay? Just we don't know where they're at. What about you?
I love this show, guys. I love you guys. I love both of you. I would definitely. No, I saw a clip. I'm not gonna lie. I saw one clip. And they said you guys were being mean to the girls.
No way.
But I didn't really care about that. This was my first time ever on any kind of podcast, and I have a dog.
You did well.
It's.
I'll give you this. You were understanding, you were kind, and you understood our issues because you're like, yo, stop talking, you're talking. That's pretty good.
Definitely.
All right, Torta, what about you?
Oh my god.
Not too much.
It's alright.
That's my girl.
It's alright.
It's alright.
That's pretty good.
Definitely. Kind of podcast, and I have a dog.
You did well.
It's.
I'll give you this. You were understanding, you were kind, and you understood our issues because you're like, yo, stop talking, you're talking. That's pretty good.
Definitely.
All right, Torta, what about you?
Oh my god.
Not too much.
It's alright.
That's my girl.
It's alright.
It's alright.
Cool. All right.
I'd rather shoot with my voice.
There you go. All right. Cool.
Anything else for chats?
All right. We're good to go. Oh, I like that one. Yo, send me that picture. I'll post that one on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Group of 5 King with the 6, 11, 16, 21 subs. Juice Squeezer with the 1, Tactical Panda with the 1, Young League 21 with the 1, G1 the Streets with the 1, 27, not 6 million, 271K, not 6 million. Appreciate all you guys.
If you look at Iran, they've been doing this stuff for 47
Qatar, thank you again so much for 25.
years. They've been taunting you and everybody else, all of the media, everything. They're very good with the press. They have a great fake media. And I put out a truth a little while ago. I said, if I had the white flag of surrender raised, and if they said, praise be to Allah, Trump is the greatest president, we hereby surrender, the New York Times would write that they won the war. They've lost so much credibility. So it's a very different kind of a place than Venezuela. But Venezuela, you know, we're working Venezuela with the people that we
Do you see the Cuba operation running similarly to the way
possibly, it's possible.
Yeah. Now, what they're going to have to figure out with Cuba is how they're going to do it. Are they going to do a nighttime operation and kidnap the top guy? Or are they going to, do a land invasion and just take them out, take all the top people?
That makes sense.
I'm in the whip for my strap.
I'm about to put shirt, bro.
you spaz.
That shit like Jolly Barbers. You see my shirt, bro.
I'm out of place. All the niggas thought they was gon' kill me. How they did. Let off fix with the switches till they empty. Now they scared. Heard a nigga with some youngins. Put some money on my head. Damn. Then I said they out the
Because the thing with Cuba is they're straight up communist country. Okay? Straight up communist country. They're much more gung-ho than Maduro and Venezuela. But with Maduro, there were people that flipped on it.
Oh, shit. Fuck.
Okay, people flipped on him and flips on him and got him in a bad spot. With Cuba, might be a little bit harder, bro.
Well, there's another thing. These places are close by. Whereas if you look at Iran, it's a very long trip. You know, I flew to that area a few times, and unrelated to this, but you're flying for 18 hours. You know, you're flying for a long time. Venezuela's relatively close, and Cuba's out.
Okay, why does them in El Como? You from Indonesia?
The Africans from Africa.
You know, did y'all ask me though? Okay, why does them in El Como?
Well, I wanted to talk about.
When did Marco get involved with Cuba? Cuba wants to talk very badly. We have a lot of people who voted for me, like 95%.
Well, yeah, I mean, Cubans in Miami are not Cubans from Cuba, bro. You know, they're like Iranian, and they're like diaspora Iranians, you know. Virtual Yachty with the one, appreciate you.
Report is in the Cuban American
Sure, I love them.
So, I wanted to present this to you, just the map of the Western Hemisphere. And when you look at, I mean, not, that's a guess, right? But when you look at this, do you see this as a fundamentally American hemisphere? Is this fundamentally
More and more so, yeah.
more and more so?
We're much more respected. So, we had a man that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. And I don't want to talk about this. If I have a trip a little bit, they'll say, oh, this is terrible. Okay, can happen. But you can't trip every time you go on the stage. We had a man that wasn't respected. He wasn't smart 40 years ago. He was the worst thing that ever happened to old people, because I have old people, friends of mine that are 93, 95 years old. They're 100%. Gary Player, great golfer. I play golf. He shot 71. He's 90 years old, and he's mentally exactly the same as he was for the last 30 years. There are a lot of people. Biden was the worst thing that ever happened to old people, because you guys were not honest with the public. The public saw it. He was a disaster. And you know the worst thing he did? Inflation was really bad, but that wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing, because I inherited all this stuff. Look at what's happening with prices. Now they're coming down, and with the oil, they're really coming down. I had to make an excursion to stop a
Miguel, thanks.
very volatile group of people that are smart, very smart. You know, the Iranians, very smart people. They're sort of primitive genius, but they're smart. Okay? I had to stop them because if they hadn't.
Yeah, primitive and smart. That's because they were sanctioned the fuck out of. They were to make all these bombs and missiles while being sanctioned to hell. Impressive, man.
Nuclear weapon, they would use it, and you want to.
house, you can make predictions on anything, right from the palm of your hand.
Sounds great. But Tony Golis can use it.
That's two big hats right there. Not ideal. It's going into his hands like that. The coming victory should be very intriguing to watch. For a level dimensional by Nick Young. Michael Cole back leading Miami. The coming victory should be very intriguing to watch. For a level dimensional by Nick Young. Michael Cole back leading Miami. With Beasley, Stevenson, Schultz. The coming victory should be very intriguing to watch. For a level so far in LA. And the five coaches control. Players go one more to credits. Instead of round two, here we go. Here we go. Outstanding matchups across the board. Matt Stevenson and Jordan Crawford. Walking bucket. They see right away the shot. Was Beasley. Jordan Crawford. Walking bucket. They see right away the shot. Was Beasley. Michael Beasley on the headlines has been Sean Williams, the reigning defensive player of the year, that kind of solidified who this Miami team and what they're all about. And you see him starting at 1 hour, even though he's giving up size. Lee Preston didn't play in college, was slated to play in Kansas. He's from Santa Ana, Oakland kid. And he steps back from 18 and strokes it good. Creativity, got to his mid-range game, able to pull right up. I was looking forward to seeing Billy play in college, actually. I just got the one on screen by Williams. Billy Preston. Stopped the distracts by Beasley. Two to shoot for Crawford. Yes. And a blocking foul on Williams. Jordan Crawford's in the corner. It's going to be tough to stop him in that time. I think we all brace for this. A coffee house, cocktail bar, speakeasy in the Rivertown district of Detroit. That should be fun for Jordan to get back in week number 2. Yeah, I got to holler at him too. Say, top it off with a nice little Davidoff, Patron, Play Day Monterey. I wonder if you might not remember this. This was like 12 years ago in Omaha. Crowd quick. Long one right here for Beasley. Chalmers for 3. Howard battles. Can't hold on to it. And Williams misses. Allen left open. Fakes. And hits it. Williams catch and shoot. That's a shot to one. Howard is going to allow Williams to have it. Even though he has right there, it's like, but LA Riots kind of extend this lead a little bit. Especially Beasley out of the lineup. Williams for 2. Laker can't connect. There's Allen, one-legged fade. That's good. There you go. That carried the lead in the halftime. What that equates to. I love that. Right now a 6-0 run for LA. Chalmers off balance. Said he wanted a foul too. Until he dropped the ball. With this, the way the game situated, the court is, drive the ball, force so much pressure on the defense, and those jump shots are going to open up. Billy Preston hits the 3. What's your point? I mean, the lane's been wide open this entire first half. There's going to be some bumping, some contact, but if you get knocked by your district defender, you're going to kind of be at the rim. That's a nice little jump shot by Mario Chalmers. But not only Michael Beasley, but Lance Stevenson to kind of handle the fluctuations in personality between those two. And it was cool to kind of
$5 a month.
MySpace is now available in most states. Download the app and start playing today.
Those are clutch points right there. I mean, just recognizing, I have to clear. Beasley lost it. Howard held down and he just flicks it in. Look at Bees. It's always that next year, getting refocused to defend your title. I don't care what league it's in. Right now, we're seeing some residue from that right now by Miami. Air ball and Howard doing it. Let's go to O'Shea. Billy Preston looking for space. Look at Beasley. Staying low on defense. Switch down Williams. Howard to Beasley to the deck. Big bodies in the ground, bro. Big bodies in the ground. And we saw a lot of this at the beginning of the season with Dwight Howard and Beasley just big bodies in the ground. And Williams. Howard to Beasley to the deck. Big bodies in the ground, bro. Big bodies in the ground. And we saw a lot of this at the beginning of the season with Dwight Howard and Beasley just kind of going at it. Look at him. Hold. Now here's the question to the official. Which one is which? Who's holding who first? Who's the... He stepped on his right foot at the very end. Yeah, he did. And again, I think at the beginning of the season, these officials have been here now for 8-9 years. Calling stuff at the beginning, the first games of the season. And that's not the look of laughter that we saw earlier from Beasley. To the interceptions, let's see here. Here we go, defense, offense. I think Lance gets this one. I think the offense may prevail on this one. David Ebanks. I'm 0 for 3 for today on some of my predictions.
What are you thinking, man? Nigga, calm down. No, dude, this thing.
Great job by the Intuit Torpedo crew. All the family and friends. Beasley had been ejected from the game. Well, I mean, it's an area mentioned what happened last year. Beasley got ejected. Lance Stevenson.
choose to work for him. Also because he killed Rob. He also killed Pastor Zeke. What? Don't tell nobody.
He's gotta go. He's gotta go off the court. Coward was teed up for stepping on pieces before he gets his second tackle. And Howard's clean the ice cube, but ice cube ain't got nothing to do with this. I mean, the rules are the rules. And now Michael Cooper speaking to a fellow Hall of Famer. But you know, sometimes that was that last one was just a bunch of hugging. It's just a bunch of hugging out here. But, you know, Jim, you're absolutely right. As a coach, maybe you pull your player out till things cool down. Because now you don't have Michael Beasley or the way. Lance is down. He took a hard. I mean, his leg got caught up underneath him. And he bent backwards. On an already short leg. I mean, his leg got caught. He's on the way. The coach, maybe you pull your player out till things cool down. Because now you don't have Michael Beasley or the way. There's a chance it could have just scared him. Yeah. Because it scared me. I tell you that. The floor. There's a chance it could have just scared him. Stevenson, man, we can only hope for the best. Let's take a look. Hopefully, it's just like right here. There's a chance it could have just scared him. Yeah. That wing is coming down in an awkward position. It's all power. It's all power. Yeah. Let's see. I just think that because of this league and the physicality, and tell me if you agree or not, that the officials
Nice one.
Stevenson for three, and that's kind of all we can do right now. Re-enter into play. Lance Williams rolls against a smaller Allen. Missed the layup. That's part of that rust too. You know what I mean? Look out, here goes. And Stevenson. Crawford in there. Stevenson pushing back.
Yo.
Anderson. Look out, here goes. And Stevenson. Crawford in there. Stevenson pushing back. Anderson, Crawford. Look out, here goes. And Stevenson. Crawford in there. Stevenson pushing back. Anderson, Crawford. Ebanks was in there. And this game is really taking on a life of its own.
It's over.
Chris Haynes in there. There's Coop. Sort it out again. The push, here's the hard foul, and it's afterward. That's going to be a flagrant foul tech. It gotta be. Gotta be. Not an extra shove afterwards. But not an extra. It's afterward. That's going to be a flagrant foul tech. It gotta be. Gotta be. Not an extra shove afterwards. It's afterwards. That's going to be a flagrant foul tech. It gotta be. Gotta be. Not an extra shove afterwards.
Yo, niggas is wild.
But where's the basketball play after the foul here? That's not a basketball play. Not a basketball play. They're still looking for him after. Now to give There's layers in which you have to break this down to how we've gotten to this point.
First off, you had Howard stepping on the foot of Beasley, which led to a technical. Then you had a hard foul, which led to a spill into the first row, not all the way into the stands between Howard and Beasley. The benches cleared, security raced in. Howard and Beasley were ejected. It took Beasley a long time to clear the floor. Going down with a left knee injury that he's playing through because they're trying to avoid a forfeit. With Reggie Evans out and trying to stay available with 3 players. And now you have this. It's been an adventure. That's it. Game's done. This is a great league. It's physical. These guys take it so seriously. There have been some tough moments in terms of skirmishes and fights. They press through it. But week one, you hope that we can avoid situations where it just devolves into something that can't be harnessed.
Well, I say this. It's not the kind of start you want, especially to the prime time game. Okay. So it's a lot of history between these two teams dating back to last year. I thought that this last foul by Stevenson was going to have to forfeit the game anyway because there was going to be a flagrant foul, maybe another technical for him.
Hell yeah.
And I asked her, she's like, so like what happened? She was like, they made me cry, they said horrible things, and I was like, but wait, I don't remember her name. I really don't.
What's
I don't remember her name.
Is she white?
She had red hair. I don't know. She had dyed red hair. I have no idea.
Did you go back and watch her episode specifically?
I didn't go back and find her episode because I was like, what did they say that like offended you? And she was like, they just said a lot. Everything, and I was like, did they come after your mom? Like, what's going on? I was like, if you're not giving me a reason for me to not come on the show just because someone hurt your feelings, then like,
Oh yeah!
Maybe that's why. Got so large. She told the entire community of the party scene, oh, they're fucking assholes, don't go on their show. And it's funny because Lil Birdie told me this. I'm like, oh, this bitch was fucking still mad for that day. What did I say that day? Yo, Chuck is fast. I was like, just fuck. Okay. Yo, why did I say she was dumb? Because she was dumb, nigga. All sorts of arguments and then saying that like, this it wasn't that like the entire time she just made dumb arguments. Yeah. And if
someone in the chat's gonna, can you guys read real quick for me because we can't pull up. We don't have time to pull up now. But one of you guys in the chat can like tell me what it was because then I'll remember.
You said that because she was so.
And then I don't put it in yours.
Okay, that might have been what I said. She was crying. And then she cried a long time.
Yeah, nigga, you were here. I mean, yeah, you were inside there. What's your point? You hit the fucking price. Oh yeah. That's what it was. She had a guy friend. Yes, and I said, men and women cannot be friends. She didn't, and yeah, so then she wants to fuck men. She was like, oh yeah, but we talk. I was like, well, why did you guys not? Why did you not try? And then he was like, in another country. That's what it was.
That's what
It was music talk. Sorry.
regardless, that was like the main just I got is everyone's like they're gonna bully you and they're gonna make you cry, and I was like, I really don't think that there's anything that they would say that would make me cry, but like let's just go on and find out. Yeah. Me too.
Because and I'll tell you, like, there's just certain things that women do that I'm just like, there's no fucking way that she's like 100% like influenced by a female, because no offense, most women are fucking dumb, and that's a credit to you guys. I'm glad you guys are a lot smarter than
We have a good panel.
Yeah, this was incredible. I get a show maybe like this once a year, so I gotta give you guys credit. And that's tough to come by because I mostly tell women to read.
I got a really good male perspective. I worked for 3 years on a door-to-door sales team, and I was one of 2 females, like, in our entire company. So, and I'm not saying that I completely understand the male mindset. Every time I learn something, like,
also closer to that. Because, and I'll tell you why. When most girls, because this women's. Something called grouping. So if one girl tells you don't do that, it's XYZ, most of them will take that at face value, believe it, and go with it, because women provided to each other information, blah, blah, they'll believe it. So the fact that you took the extra step and said, okay, what did they, and you asked funny questions. What did they say that made you offended? Oh, XYZ. What was it? XYZ. And she didn't really tell you what it was. So you said, you know what?
Max isn't gay.
You go look at the research, listen to the arguments. Oh no, she's just stupid. That's why they said that. And then you're like, no, well, I'm not stupid, so I'll be fine going over there. That's like, that's not what women do. That's higher level. That's critical thinking, which is not typical of women, no offense. So whenever I see a girl that does that, I'm like, all right, you got a fuck dad or somebody that told you to not be a fucker. That's what I grew up. Yeah. So okay, kudos to you, because that took a lot of. Because most women are not going to take that step and look at a clip and be like, no, this bitch is dumb. So all right, credit to you, man. Respect. All right. We got some smart girls on the panel.
Yeah, she's really smart.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
What about you?
So, okay, at first I was a little skeptical. I thought y'all were some like bitches hate. Where are you getting it from? No, I
DPG.
No, y'all probably wouldn't, but I was actually like racing the country.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys got
No, Kansas City, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you guys at first like, you know, fuck bitches are dumb. They don't have no brain, like, you know.
We still think that.
Yeah.
It's not you girls.
But, you know, you guys, I think you guys are all like really intelligent, really well spoken. You know,
No, what the
especially
fuck?
from like, you know, being pregnant and not in relationships and stuff. I don't know, I feel like you guys definitely taught me things done.
Beautiful.
Shout out to DPG with the 100 kids.
100 That means you can go on the show with no ads, so show up to DPG, man.
Yeah, a lot of you fucking crybabies from last time. Crying about Rumble Premium. Yeah,
Also,
if we do go to Rumble Premium, a bunch of niggas can watch it for free.
Also, Rumble's doing a new update, so you guys know, coming very soon. We're gonna actually, shut up. We're gonna actually, access gifted subs, we randomly distribute it to channel feed followers after the stream's over, and they will receive the email. Coming very soon to Rumble.
Also, there'll be a
subs will go to people that are once the stream ends, see their email. So follow, they get sub that stream, when it ends, so go to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but it has to have been on that stream. It has to have been on that stream.
So access will go to people that watch the show.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Nice.
Okay, I feel like y'all like open my mindset like a lot of like how y'all think about stuff. Like, cause I feel like we're like so emotional as girls, and like y'all just like have like black and white like looking at the world. If that makes sense, like
Logic.
yeah, like a logic. And we're just like real emotional. So I feel like y'all like open my mindset.
How old are you again?
19.
It's pretty good.
Well, men see the world in black and white when you see in color.
I was worried that she never.
Wait, go ahead.
I was worried that too many niggas would fuck your brain up. You're freshly white and stuff. What about you?
I'm thankful that I got to experience. That I got to experience.
I don't know. I'm assuming.
Damn. I was gonna say WD times. So, thank you. I appreciate it. Chelsea, right? Chelsea?
Yes,
Yeah. Chelsea,
She actually saw me perform, but I came here, I wasn't really sure because my birthday's in a few days, so I wanted to do something different that I've never done. This is my first time on a panel on a podcast.
Okay.
And it was nice.
Thank you for beating all the stereotypes. Because I normally make fun of black women all the time. I'm racist. So I'm very, thank you so much for listening. Black women carry different. Black women carry black women carry. These after-hour shows for stupid women. So I appreciate this shit than anybody else. We know. These gray hairs. I got more gray hairs from talking to women than arresting drug traffickers. I swear to God, bro, I get more stress from doing the fucking. You were there. See the difference? So with the dumbass here's some report versus now?
Yeah.
Actually, our solo shows are fun. Yeah.
I've seen it on the more gray hairs from talking to women than arresting drug traffickers. I swear to God, bro, I get more stress from doing the fucking. You were there. See the difference? So the dumbass chicks on before versus now?
Yeah.
Actually, our solar shows you were fine.
Yeah, I've seen it on that time. These gray hairs are from women, not terrorists.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Facts.
Women are complicated.
Oh, yeah.
We know.
Come on. John, this is why I drink, nigga.
I'll be honest, Chris, I think it's kind of justified. This is not easy, bro.
Every week.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You girls, every pass.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Hey, Kumar, is it curry chicken or chicken curry?
What curry chicken?
Is it curry chicken or chicken curry?
Oh, alright. So question, right? I don't know how I'm gonna celebrate Happy Hood. So I'm dropping the music video on the 30th. I was working at the
What the?
I don't party in a club. I don't know how I was gonna celebrate my birthday actually. Drop the music video on the 30th. I would like for you guys to check it out if you can for support.
Right.
And question.
Yeah. What's your Instagram so they can follow you and shit?
My Instagram is Kimora KEMORAA_Jones.
She's in the description, so go check it out. That's coming out on the 30th, right?
The 30th of this month.
So what do you want to say?
Other than the blowjob from the robot, do you guys have concerns of it turning into an iRobot movie?
This is free, though.
Like trying to kill us or harm us?
Just taking a step further. So you mean beyond the sexual? Yeah, I mean that's I think AI is going to replace jobs. I think the sex robots are going to replace women to a degree. I don't see how more and more of this is going to help with human interaction.
You know, it's actually trying to leading AI and it backed itself up.
Yeah, it lies.
Yeah.
When they try to shut off the lies.
Yes.
Because it wants to self-preserve.
Remember, it's
I think that's the anti-gravity.
Well, Terminator's coming sooner than we thought, bro.
No, the rest is
I told you, bro. Don't worry.
Men will be the one to save your asses, don't worry. Well, I think you better get one up now.
Oh, it's your podcast. Chucky Broke. Hey, censorship. Yeah, man. 40-something total. Yeah, this is the last show for the league anyway, because I'll be here. I don't know. South Carolina, West South Carolina, guys. So, what's up, man?
Sophia.
So I thought that we talked about a lot of good, interesting stuff, which I wasn't really expecting because I too was bored, not to come on.
Oh, yeah? What did it tell you?
I haven't seen too many of the videos. Like I said, I only saw clips, so I didn't really know what to expect.
What did they tell you?
They just told me that you guys are misogynistic.
No way, us?
Did you hear narcissists? You're narcissists?
No, I didn't see that.
That's good. Damn.
Well, they're right. We are misogynistic, but we are misogynistic.
I know, it's really cool to see that your guys' points are actually really valid, and I agree with them. I mean, besides all men cheat, I don't agree with that, but everything else you said,
I'm telling you.
Why do men ghost women? That's what I said. We know why. How about you guys?
Men ghost women to talk to somebody else, just quite frankly.
Somebody was ghosted here in town. Who was that?
Is that on the right?
Oh, her?
Right? You?
I didn't ask that question, no.
We got?
No.
How did you feel when ghosted?
It still hurts.
30 minutes. Why do you think guys ghost women?
Well, I mean, it could be for a number of reasons, but typically speaking, it's because guys love confidence.
It's okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I
are making progress. I watch these shows religiously, and girls are like starting to it's like first one, they're like, you motherfucker, faggot.
You know why?
It's gay.
You know why? I was coming. I know it's coming.
Jesus is coming.
I saw it everywhere all the time. The rush is coming.
Go get me started.
On what?
We are already in end times.
You better get right
We've
done.
been in end times for a long time.
My nigga, I live my best life. You better cook.
They're actually already built the third temple.
Strip club.
They're starting the third temple, and they're already practicing the sacrifice of the red heifer.
Let's go. She's very busy.
Actually, they already made one, but they said that it has, like one white hair.
Two. We have two red hairs on.
That's impressive. How the fuck do you know about that?
I'm religious.
See you later.
I'm sober.
I was actually in JPQ and TPQ. I had memorized chapters of the Bible.
You know that's a big reason why the war in Gaza happened, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Because
It's biblical. Everything that is happening is for a reason. And did you know that they said that in end times, right, it will be like the days of Noah. What was happening in the days of Noah, right? There were the fallen angels. They were procreating with the humans, right? They were making little hybrids, right? We're making robots, and we're trying to procreate with them. That's exactly what happened.
shit. Okay. I mean, freedom.
It's right. We're making robots, and we're right. They're the fallen angels. They were procreating with the humans, right? They were making little hybrids, right? We're making robots, and we're trying to procreate with them. That's exactly right. They're the fallen angels. They were procreating. And did you know that they said that in end times, right? It will be like the days of Noah. What was happening in the days of Noah, right? They're the fallen angels. They were procreating with the humans, right? They were making little hybrids, right? We're making robots, and we're trying to procreate with them. That's exactly what happened.
Shit. Okay. I mean, for you to know that tells me you have to be keeping up with the news because they do that in secret.
And in the
then
Bible.
anybody you know, and yeah, some fucking I went on a podcast with the ashes of the heifer that they. It was July 1st they did it. The trash run.
Yep, and they actually have the ashes from the first heifer.
Yeah, yeah.
They did that.
I went on the podcast and showed it off.
Yeah.
Like earlier this month.
Yeah. I'm watching her girl who's actually there right now. Her TikTok is called like I Am Redeemed, and she's in literally the temple is, and she's showing all the flags, all the people. You know, they actually have they started marching around the temple just last week, and now they're actually having choirs, like holy choirs, singing outside of the temple.
So what she's referring to, some of you guys are like, what the fuck's going on here? They're trying to destroy a mosque in Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and build the temple there for their Messiah to come back. Right? Who's your
The
Christian?
Antichrist.
The Antichrist.
Yes.
Okay. So, which obviously because they don't accept Jesus, right? And they think the Antichrist is going to come. Their Messiah.
That's why they built the grave on these walls. The graveyard, because he's supposed to come through there, right?
Yep. And they want the area where they sacrifice the cow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about Hamas. The big reason why Hamas invaded was because they wanted to destroy that mosque.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring about the end of times. So a lot of the reasons why they invaded Israel on October 7th was to stop. The operation is called, a lot of people don't, the Westerners don't talk about this. The name of the operation is called the Al-Aqsa Flood. The name of their operation for October 7th was that because they want to stop it from destroying the mosque. So they destroy the mosque, they're going to build the temple and bring about the end of times.
Yeah.
Their acceleration is the desert part. It's the Jews.
Crazy. Yeah. They're trying so hard.
And, okay, and who else knew about that? Who else knew about that? Someone else here knew.
She be talking. Listen, I know a lot of bags.
What the fuck?
Me too.
Alright.
Like I said, I was a pastor's kid for a long time, so I grew up in church.
You still be trying.
He did be mine, but it's okay.
Jesus is like
Good.
No, I mean, how the fuck did you know that? Like, I know you said you keep up with life, boy, did you watch the news? Like, how did TikTok? I know you're religious, but like, how did you TikTok?
I've been keeping up with it since I was like 14 years old. I've known we've been heading into end times since I was 14. I've been telling everyone, literally.
So you're like, so you keep up with the war and shit?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
We're entering the Feast of Trumpets 2 after September 23rd.
I'm just right now. There's no dates. I'm just right now. What is the end result of this? Who wins at the very end?
God, obviously good.
Okay, but on Earth, we got
I know who are worshiping him, who
who wins at the very end?
God, obviously good.
Okay, but on Earth, we got
I know who are worshiping him, who chose him.
what are they called?
Christians.
No.
People that are followers of Jesus.
No.
Yeah.
No, no.
Whenever Christ comes back,
No.
they're believers.
What are their names?
Disciples. Disciples?
No, the new Jerusalem. Yeah.
I know about the new heaven and the new earth.
Yeah. At the very end.
Listen, like for the 7,000 years that we reign with Jesus?
Yeah. 1,000 years. Cast club members.
Is it 1,000? Is that before we go to the earth?
Yo, there's something deeper than that.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what they're called.
Have you watched though? What is the new Jerusalem? What's going on with the show, man? Yeah, bro. No, I'm like, this guy from Earth's crazy. So basically,
I'm very religious.
basically, the old Jewish system will be taken away,
Yeah.
burned, and the new system of Jews, but they're God's children again.
Exactly.
All the goyim that were serving God, they become the new Jews on Earth. So
When Jesus, so what are they called?
So,
What are they called? You never answered this question.
well, the new Jerusalem. No, absolutely. All right. It's the same up.
So they're believers, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I just said. You told me no.
All right, no, I'm asking for the name of the people, but
But you didn't refer to them as the new chosen people, the Goyim, the Gentiles.
so people calling themselves the Jews now are not really God's chosen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're the Christians, according to Scripture. Yeah.
Honestly, you can't even really refer to people as Christians now because Christians are more stereotypical. You want followers of Jesus.
Yeah, because you they party on Sundays, strip, and they go to church on Sunday.
No, I'm serious because like I said, right? I'm a dancer, I'm a model, right? But it's not like I don't repent for it. I don't pray about it.
At least you understand, you know. That's huge.
Right,
That's
yeah,
huge.
exactly.
So,
That's what
I'll give you
separates
that,
me between other people.
Come on,
I look into it, but I preach at the club. Listen, I talk about Jesus.
You are correct. Of all the people, they executed the average time. Come on, where's my Bible? Escorts prostitutes.
Listen, yeah. He healed them. He healed them and tried.
They executed the average time. Come on, where's my Bible? Escorts prostitutes.
Listen, yeah. He healed them. He healed them and transported them. Exactly. He used to be unqualified. Healed the strongest man.
Crazy, but it's true.
Alright. So because you think I'm not Christian, so I'm just learning this shit recently.
Well, I smashed one nigga. I'm doing it in the name of.
Okay, you give your name. Okay, what about you, Mr. Medicano? Do you have anyone to say? Did recently.
Well, I smashed one nigga. Crazy, but it's true.
Exactly. He used to be unqualified. Healed the strongest man.
Crazy, but it's true.
Alright. So because you think I'm not Christian, so I'm just learning this shit recently.
Well, I smashed one nigga. I'm doing it.
Listen, yeah. He healed them. He healed them and transported them. Exactly. He used to be unqualified. Healed the strongest man.
Crazy, but it's true.
Alright. So because you think I'm not Christian, so I'm just learning this shit recently.
Well, I smashed one nigga. I'm doing it in the name of.
Okay, you give your name. Okay, what about you, Mr. Medicano? Do you have
challenged the living God and ruled with power, deception, and blood. She came from a powerful foreign kingdom, carrying her gods into a land chosen by the Lord. Through influence and fear, she reshaped a nation's worship. Altars to Baal rose. The prophets of God were hunted, and the truth was pushed into hiding. Kings bowed to her will. Justice was twisted by her command. Innocent blood was spilled in the name of power. Yet in the midst of drought, famine, and fire from heaven, she refused to repent. When confronted by God's prophets, she answered with threats. When shown undeniable truth, she chose defiance. This is a story of power that challenged prophecy, of a queen who believed herself untouchable, and of a God who will not share his glory. This is the true biblical story of Queen Jezebel, and the judgment that proved no throne stands higher than the Lord. The story of Jezebel begins not in Israel, but in the coastal kingdoms of Phoenicia, where the Mediterranean waves crashed against ancient ports and the smoke of incense rose continually to foreign gods. Jezebel was born into royalty, a Phoenician princess, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. Sidon was a prominent city-state in Phoenicia, located in what is now modern-day Lebanon. The Phoenicians were known throughout the ancient world for their... Sidon was a prominent city-state in Phoenicia, located in what is now modern-day Lebanon. The Phoenicians were known throughout the ancient world for their fervent worship of Baal and Asherah, fertility deities that dominated Canaanite religion. Jezebel grew up in a world where these gods were not merely worshipped, but celebrated, where temple prostitution was considered sacred, and where the storm god... Jezebel grew up in a world where these gods were not merely worshipped, but celebrated, where temple prostitution was considered sacred, and where the storm god Baal was believed to control the rain, the crops, and the very survival of nations. This was the religious worldview she carried with her when she left her homeland for marriage. In the ancient Near East, royal daughters were often married off to secure political alliances. So when Ahab became king of Israel around 874 BC, he sought to strengthen his kingdom through such an alliance. This was a common diplomatic tool in that time. Ahab married Jezebel, and the marriage was likely arranged to secure favorable trade relations and military support from the powerful Phoenician city-states. On the surface, it seemed like a brilliant political move, but this marriage would prove to be one of the most disastrous decisions in Israel's history. The Bible records Ahab's marriage to Jezebel with striking severity. And Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, he took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. This passage reveals that Jezebel's arrival marked a turning point. Upon becoming queen, Jezebel did not assimilate into Israel's faith. Instead, she brought her gods with her and insisted they be honored. Ahab, either out of love for his wife, political calculation, or genuine religious conviction, supported her efforts wholeheartedly. He built a temple for Baal in Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom. An Asherah pole, associated with the goddess Asherah, was also erected. This wasn't merely the addition of foreign gods to Israel's religious landscape. It was an aggressive campaign to replace the worship of Yahweh with Baal worship. Baal worship directly contradicted Israel's covenant with the Lord. To worship Baal was to deny the Lord's sovereignty and to attribute his works to a false god. Even more troubling, Jezebel initiated a violent persecution of the prophets of Yahweh. The Bible records that she was killing off the Lord's prophets. Obadiah, a devout believer who served as Ahab's palace administrator, had to hide 100 prophets in caves and supply them with food and water to keep them alive during this persecution. Meanwhile, Jezebel supported 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, all of whom ate at Jezebel's conflict was clear. Jezebel sought to replace the worship of the Lord with the worship of Baal. Into this darkness stepped Elijah the Tishbite, a prophet whose very name means Yahweh is my God, a direct challenge to the Baal worship that Jezebel had promoted. Elijah's first recorded act was to confront King Ahab with a devastating prophecy. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except by my word. This was a direct assault on Baal's supposed domain, as Baal was believed to be the storm god who controlled rain and fertility. By withholding rain, the Lord exposed Baal as powerless. For 3.5 years, the land suffered under a devastating drought. Crops failed, animals died, the people cried out. Yet Jezebel did not repent. Instead, she hardened her devotion to Baal and sought the life of the prophet Elijah, who, at the beginning of the drought, had fled at the word of the Lord and hid by the Kerith, where God miraculously provided for him through ravens that brought him bread and meat. After 3.5 years of devastating drought, God told Elijah to present himself to Ahab, promising to send rain. When Elijah met Ahab, the king greeted him with hostility.
Is that you troubler of Israel?
Elijah's response was bold and direct. I have not made trouble for Israel, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed Baal. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. When the people gathered, Elijah challenged them. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. The people remained silent, unwilling or unable to commit. Elijah then proposed the test. 2 bulls would be prepared for sacrifice, one for Baal's prophets and one for Elijah. Each would be placed on wood, but no fire would be set to it. The prophets would call on their God, and Elijah would call on Yahweh, the God who answers by fire. He is God. The prophets of Baal went first. From morning until noon, they called on Baal, dancing around the altar they had made, but there was no response. Elijah began to taunt them.
Shout louder! Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened.
The prophets became frantic, shouting louder and slashing themselves with swords and spears until their blood flowed, a common practice in Canaanite worship. They continued their intense prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice, but still there was no response, no fire, no voice, no attention. Then it was Elijah's turn. He repaired the altar of the Lord with 12 stones for the 12 tribes of Israel, prepared the sacrifice, and to make the miracle even more dramatic, he had the people drench the sacrifice and the wood with water 3 times until the water ran down and filled the trench. Then Elijah prayed to the Lord, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God. Immediately, the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and even the water in the trench. When the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried,
The Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God.
Elijah then commanded the people to seize the prophets of Baal, not letting any escape. He brought them down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered them there, all 450 of them. When Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including how he had killed all the prophets of Baal, she was furious. She sent a messenger to Elijah with a chilling threat.
May the gods deal with me. be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them.
This threat reveals much about Jezebel's character. Even after the dramatic demonstration of God's power on Mount Carmel, even after her prophets had been utterly humiliated and destroyed, she remained defiant. She didn't repent or reconsider her religious convictions. Instead, she doubled down, vowing to kill the prophet who had exposed the impotence of her gods. But why? Was this stubborn pride, genuine devotion to Baal despite the evidence, or the calculated move of a queen who knew that admitting defeat would mean losing all political and religious authority? Perhaps it was all of these. Jezebel had staked everything on Baal. Her identity, her power, her legacy. To acknowledge Yahweh's supremacy would be to admit her entire life had been built on a lie. So she chose defiance over truth and doubled down on the path that would lead to her destruction. Surprisingly, Elijah, who had boldly confronted and called down fire on 450 prophets, was terrified. He fled for his life, terrified of Jezebel's wrath. He escaped into the wilderness. Exhausted and despondent, he sat under a broom bush and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. God ministered to Elijah through an angel who provided food and water, strengthening him for a 40-day journey to Mount Horeb. There, in a cave, God spoke to Elijah. God gave him new assignments and assured him that he was not alone. There were still 7,000 in Israel who had not bowed to God. Quick announcement before we continue. Of sound effects to support, and it makes it super glory of Naboth's vineyard. This incident reveals not only her ruthlessness, but also her contempt for Israelite law and justice. Naboth owned a vineyard in Jezreel, close to the palace of King Ahab. Ahab wanted the vineyard to use as a vegetable garden and offered to buy it or trade it for a better vineyard. However, Naboth refused, saying, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my ancestors." Under Israelite law, land was considered a sacred inheritance from God, to be kept within families and tribes. Naboth's refusal was based on religious conviction and legal tradition, not mere stubbornness. Ahab returned home sullen and angry, lying on his bed, refusing to eat. When Jezebel found him in this state and learned the reason, her response revealed her character.
Is this how you act as king over Israel? Get up and eat. Cheer up. I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth, the Jezreelite.
Jezebel then orchestrated a judicial murder. She wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent them to the elders and nobles in Naboth's city. The letters instructed them to proclaim a death.
Why spread your money across multiple prediction markets when you don't have to? Access the 3 major U.S.
O king before him had received. Your throne will endure forever. Then, one evening, he stood on his rooftop. He saw something he was never meant to see. What followed was not just a sin, it was a cover-up. A loyal soldier carrying his own death sentence in a sealed letter without knowing what was inside. A prophet who walked into the throne room and told the king a story, and the king condemned himself with his own words. You are the man. 4 words that shattered a kingdom. Lloyd, the son who stole the throne, and the king who once danced before God with all his might, fleeing his own city barefoot, weeping with his head covered. Became one of the most powerful prayers ever sung. If this story speaks to you, bleat from the shepherd fields of Bethlehem. Now, let's begin. David had come a long way from the shepherd fields of Bethlehem. He had killed a giant with a stone. He had survived years running from a king who wanted him dead. After Saul's death, the tribe of Judah anointed David king in Hebron, where he ruled for 7 years. Then the remaining tribes of Israel came to him and anointed him king over all of them. With the nation united, David turned toward Jerusalem, a stronghold held by the Jebusites. They mocked him from the walls, claiming even the blind and the lame could defend it. But David captured the city and made it his capital. He built his palace there. They mocked him from the wall. David turned toward Jerusalem, a stronghold held by the Jebusites. They mocked him from the walls, claiming even the blind and the lame could defend it. But David captured the city and made it his capital. He built his palace there and brought the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem with celebration and sacrifice. Then, through the prophet Nathan, God made him a promise no king before him had received. Your throne will endure forever. Then spring came. In that time, spring was the season when roads dried and kings marched to war. The Ammonites had provoked Israel, and the army was ready. But David did not go. He sent Joab, his commanding general, along with the entire army. They crossed the Jordan and marched east to besiege the Ammonite capital of Rabbah. David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, he rose from his bed and walked along the roof of the palace. From that height, David could see everything, and he saw a woman bathing. She was very beautiful.
Who is that woman?
She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite.
Her husband was not home. He was east of the Jordan, fighting David's war. David sent messengers to bring her to the palace. She came to the palace that night. David slept with her. Then she went home. Scripture adds one detail that matters. She had just purified herself from her monthly uncleanness. This was a ritual cleansing required by the law of Moses after a woman's cycle. It means she could not have been pregnant before that night. There would be no ambiguity about the father. Weeks passed. Then a message arrived from Bathsheba.
I am pregnant.
2 words in Hebrew. Enough to unravel a kingdom. Bathsheba's husband was at war. She was carrying the king's child, and under the law of Moses, adultery was punishable by death for both the man and the woman. If the truth came out, it would destroy them both. David did not confess. The man who had always turned to God turned to his own mind so the child would look like his. He needed a lie that no one would question. He sent word to the battlefield. Bring me Uriah the Hittite. Joab received the order and sent Uriah to Jerusalem. The soldier arrived straight from the battlefield, still carrying the dust of the siege on him. David received him in the palace and asked about the war. He had no idea why the king had summoned him. Then David told him to go home.
Go down to your house and wash your feet.
In that culture, telling a soldier to wash his feet meant rest, relax, enjoy your wine. David even sent a gift of food after him. The plan was simple. If Uriah slept with Bathsheba, everyone would assume the child was his. But Uriah didn't go home. He lay down that night at the entrance of the palace with the king's servants. When David found out the next morning, he called Uriah back and asked him why.
The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing.
So David tried again. The next evening, he invited Uriah to eat and drink with him at the palace. He kept the wine flowing until Uriah was drunk. Surely now, with his judgment clouded, Uriah would stumble home to his wife. He did not. Even drunk, Uriah went out and slept with the king's servants again. 2 attempts. David could not break this man's integrity. David would need something worse. The next morning, David sat down and wrote a letter to Joab. The context was specific. Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. Then David sealed the letter and handed it to Uriah himself. The soldier carried his own death sentence back to the battlefield without knowing what was inside. Joab received the letter, read it, and obeyed. He studied the walls of Rabbah and identified the section where the strongest Ammonite defenders were positioned. He assigned Uriah to that spot.
Take your men to the wall.
The Ammonites came out to fight. The battle pressed close to the fortifications, exactly where the defenders had the advantage. Arrows rained down from above. Several of David's soldiers fell, and among the dead was Uriah the Hittite. He died with his sword in his hand, facing the enemy, doing the very thing his king had refused to do. Joab sent a messenger to David with the battle report. So Joab gave the messenger specific instructions. If the king becomes angry about the losses, tell him Uriah the Hittite is also dead. The messenger arrived and delivered the report. When he mentioned Uriah's name, David did not flinch.
Say this to Joab. Do not let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack and destroy the city.
The sword devours one as well as another. As if Uriah's death was random, as if it were war and not murder. Bathsheba heard that her husband was dead and mourned him. When the mourning period ended, David sent for her, brought her into the palace as his wife. She bore him a son. To everyone watching, it looked like a king showing kindness to a fallen soldier's widow. The secret was buried. No one suspected. But David was not at peace. Later, he would write that while he kept silent, his strength was draining away, and God's hand felt heavy upon him day and night. But the silence was not agreement. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. God sent the prophet Nathan to David. Nathan did not come with accusations. He came with a story. Before he was a king, before he was a warrior, David was a shepherd, a boy who had protected his flock from lions and bears with his own hand. Nathan walked into the throne room and
and spoke to that boy. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich, and the other poor. The rich man had a great number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him.
One day, a traveler arrived at the rich man's house and needed to prepare a meal for his guest. The rich man had more sheep than he could count, but instead of taking from what was his, he went to the poor man's house, took his only lamb, slaughtered it, and served it to his guest. David's anger burned hot. A man who had everything, taking the only precious thing from a man who had nothing, not because he needed to, but because he could. David had spent his childhood protecting lambs, exactly like that one.
As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over, because he did such a thing and had no pity.
The king had spoken. The verdict was final. He had no idea he had just judged himself. Nathan looked David in the eye.
You are the man.
4 words. The throne room went silent. Then Nathan spoke not as a man, but as the voice of God. He told David that the Lord had anointed him king over Israel and delivered him from Saul's hand. God had given him Saul's throne and royal household. He had given him the kingdom of Israel and Judah. But David despised the word of the Lord. He used the enemy's blade to kill a man who was loyal to him. He took Uriah's wife to be his own, and then buried the truth so no one would know. Now, the consequences. The sword would never depart from David's house. God would raise up evil against David from within his own family. And God would take David's own wives and give them to someone close to him. That man would lie with them in broad daylight. Before all Israel, David from within his own family. And God would take David's own wives and give them to someone close to him. That man would lie with them in broad daylight. Before all Israel. What David had done in secret on the rooftop, God would repay on that same rooftop for the whole nation to see. Every word landed like a stone. He did not make excuses. He did not blame Bathsheba or Joab or the war. He said 2 words in Hebrew. Chatati lai hadivyo bioha. I have sinned against the Lord. The shortest confession in Scripture and the most complete. David understood something in that moment that most people never grasp. Every sin against another person is first a sin against the God who made them. Nathan answered immediately. You're not going to die. The Lord has taken away your sin. That was his forgiveness. But forgiveness did not erase the consequences. David's sin had given the enemies of the Lord reason to mock the God of Israel. And for that reason, the son born to David and Bathsheba would die. God spared the father. Nathan turned and walked out of the throne room. Would die. God spared the father. Nathan turned and walked out of the throne room.
Soy Lucas, tengo 4 años y soy pastor.
David had always brought his deepest moments to God through music. When he hid in caves from Saul, when God gave him victories, when the ark entered Jerusalem, he wrote psalms and sang before the Lord with all his might. David wrote again. Scripture tells us this psalm was written after the prophet Nathan confronted him about Bathsheba. Every line carries the weight of a man who had sinned and had nowhere to turn but God. David gave this psalm to the director of music so that it would be sung in Israel's worship. He turned his confession into a song, allowing future
generations to hear what repentance sounds like. What began in secret would no longer remain hidden.
According to your loving kindness, blot out my transgression. If my sin is ever before me against you, and you only I have sinned. Create in me a clean heart, oh God. Do not
Months passed. Bathsheba gave birth to a son. Then the child became sick, just as Nathan had said. David pleaded with God. He refused to eat. He lay on the ground all night, pressing his face into the floor. The elders of his household stood over him and urged him to get up. He would not. They offered him food. He pushed it away. 7 days he lay there, 7 days of fasting and weeping and begging God to change his mind. On the 7th day, the child died. The servants were afraid to tell him. They whispered among themselves, if David was this broken while the child was still alive, what would he do when he heard the child was gone? David saw them whispering. He knew.
Is the child dead?
He is dead.
Then David did something no one in the room expected. He got up from the ground. He washed his face. He changed his clothes. He went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went home and asked for food. His servants could not understand. They asked him why he had fasted and wept while the child was still alive. Yet now that the child was dead, he got up and ate.
While the child was alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows? The Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now he is dead. Why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me.
His son was gone. No amount of fasting would reverse it, but the last words carried something deeper. I will go to him. David believed that death was not the end, that one day, beyond this life, he would see his child again. David comforted Bathsheba. In time, she bore another son. They named him Solomon, and the Lord loved this child. God sent word through Nathan to give him a second name, Jedediah, which means loved by the Lord. Even in the wreckage, God was planting something new. But the prophecy Nathan had spoken was not finished. The sword never departed from David's house. David had taken multiple wives over the years, and his sons came from different mothers. His firstborn, Amnon, son of Ahinoam, became obsessed with Tamar, the daughter of David by another wife, Maacah. Tamar was beautiful, and Amnon wanted her. He lured her to his room under the pretense of illness, and when she came to care for him, he forced himself on her. Afterward, he threw her out and locked the door. When David heard what happened, he was furious, but he did nothing. 2 years passed. Absalom, Tamar's full brother, said nothing in public, but he never forgot. He waited until the time was right, invited Amnon to a feast, and had his servants kill him at the table. Absalom fled the country. Years later he returned, but not as a son seeking forgiveness. He got himself a chariot, horses, and 50 men to run ahead of him, making himself look like royalty. Every morning he stood
and when she came to care for him, he forced himself on her. Afterward, he threw her out and locked the door. When David heard what happened, he was furious, but he did nothing. 2 years passed. Absalom, Tamar's full brother, said nothing in public, but he never forgot. He waited until the time was right, invited Amnon to a feast, and had his servants kill him at the table. Absalom fled the country. Years later, he returned, but not as a son seeking forgiveness. He got himself a chariot, horses, and 50 men to run ahead of him, making himself look like royalty. Every morning, he stood at the gates of Jerusalem. When people came to bring their disputes before King David, Absalom would stop them and tell them their claims were valid, but the king didn't want to hear their case. Then he would say, "If only I were judge in this land. Anyone with a complaint could come to me, and I would give them justice." He did this for 4 years. Slowly, one conversation at a time, he turned the hearts of Israel away from his father. Then he traveled to Hebron, the very city where David had first been crowned king, and declared himself king of Israel. The conspiracy grew strong, and the number of people following Absalom kept increasing. A messenger reached David with the news. The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. David knew that if he stayed, Absalom would attack the city and put everyone in Jerusalem to the sword. So he gathered his servants, his guards, and those loyal to him, and fled Jerusalem on foot, barefoot, with his head covered, weeping as he climbed the Mount of Olive. The king, who had taken everything from a loyal soldier, now had his throne, his city, and his family torn from him by his own son. When Absalom entered Jerusalem, he took the palace as his own. And on the advice of his counselor, he went up to the roof of the palace, the same roof where David had first looked down and seen Bathsheba. And there, in a tent pitched for all to see, he lay with David's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Nathan's words had come true to the letter. What David had done in secret on that rooftop, God repaid on that same rooftop in broad daylight. But Absalom's reign did not last. David's army met Absalom's forces in the forest of Ephraim. David had given his commanders one order before the battle.
Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake.
During the fighting, Absalom rode his mule under the thick branches of a great oak tree. His hair caught in the branches, and he was left hanging in the air while the mule kept going. When word reached Joab, he took 3 javelins and drove them into Absalom's heart while he still hung alive in the tree. While the mule kept going, when word reached Joab, he took 3 javelins and drove them into Absalom's heart while he still hung alive in the tree. A messenger was sent to David. When he arrived, David asked only one question.
Is the young man Absalom safe?
The messenger answered, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." David went up to the room above the gateway and wept. He did not weep as a king mourning a traitor. He wept as a father mourning his son.
Oh, my son Absalom. My son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, Pearl. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son.
The man who had once danced before the Lord with all his might now climbed those stairs broken, whispering the name of the son who had tried to destroy him. Even then, David would have traded his own life to bring him back. That is the story of David, a man who loved God deeply and sinned greatly, a man who received mercy he did not deserve, consequences he could not escape. The sword never left his house, but neither did God. And so ends the story of David, a man who loved God deeply and sinned greatly. A man who received mercy he did not deserve and bore consequences he could not escape. But this story is not just about an ancient king. It is about something each of us has carried. From David, we learn that no one falls all at once. Sin rarely begins with a great act of evil. It begins with a small step in the wrong direction, and then another, until you no longer recognize the person you have become. From Uriah, we learn what integrity looks like when no one is watching. His king gave him every reason to go home. He refused because his brothers were still sleeping in Oak. We learn what integrity looks like when no one is watching. His king gave him every reason to go home. He refused because his brothers were still sleeping in open fields. The man with the least power in this story had the most character. From Nathan, we learn that truth does not need volume. He did not shout to the king. He told him a story. And the story made David judge himself before he even knew he was the guilty one. Sometimes the most powerful confrontation is not an accusation. It is a matter. And from David's psalm, we learn that repentance is not about erasing what we have done. David did not ask God to remove the consequences. He asked God not to remove his presence. That is the difference between regret and repentance. Regret says, I wish this had not happened to me. Repentance says, I have sinned against you, and I would rather lose everything than lose you. You are not defined by your worst night, but what you do the morning after. That is what reveals who you really are. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to ARC Films and turn on notifications so you never miss a story.
What's wrong with AB? AB's
There ain't nothing wrong with him.
champion.
But he's like, he reminds me of like if you're whispering and it's under a certain type of a level, you know it's not being rude. I don't give a fuck what you're whispering about in the corner.
Okay, so you put a Hot 97.
If I was on, I don't care if I was on a podcast with Drake, my guy, and I was in the corner and whispering.
See what I mean? That's
to the point where you can't even hear me. Drake is better than all you guys. What are you
So
talking
you
about?
proved Myron's point. Yeah, you're disrespectful. That just proves to show you put 5 minutes in the basketball. Because listen, if I was on the show respectfully, Drake, somebody had a podcast, I'm gonna say, wait my turn and speak respectfully. It's common sense, bro.
I'm getting fucking Drake or not. Like, like, come on, man.
Alright, I mean, she's first on the stairs.
Yeah, man, it's fine, bro.
She proves all the stereotypes.
Yeah, it's fine, man. It's cool. It's hilarious. You know what I mean? It just proves all the stereotypes. Bro, it is what it is. Look, I'm not like one of these, but I call it like it is. This is why women fail all the time when it comes to men. This is why you guys are the least desired. This is why you guys score the lowest on rating on dating apps. It is what it is. You can either take the advice or not, and stay rosterless like you are right now.
So are you not black? What are you?
Yeah, I'm black. I'm not. So there's a big difference.
Let's go to Rumble.
Yeah, we can switch to Rumble. Yeah, there's a difference between being black and then being a moron. You're a moron. You're a moron. That's the problem here. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. See, and that's something I don't like to hear the truth, but that's what it is, bro. That's what it is. And I'm not gonna lie about it. Like, you know, and it's negative behavior. If I'm a moron, that's fine. Though.
Not listening to you is behavior. Not wanting to listen to you is behavior. If I don't respect you, then what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. No, the point is that you're disruptive.
I'm the only one disruptive when you're calling me disruptive.
See, notice how we were having a discussion before, and then I called you out for like doing that, and then you made the whole show about you.
Okay.
And then you just get rude,
Just go ahead.
rambunctious, disruptive, disrespectful. As a guest, which is ridiculous, and you confirm all the stereotypes. Notice how none of the other girls are like you are. It's actually kind of crazy. You're confirming all the stereotypes. All right, you go ahead.
I'm not sure, honestly. I have so much to say. I'm not sure what to say.
Say what you want to say.
But absolutely, I will say everything I want to say. I'll never hold back.
Okay.
But yes, I absolutely I understand now. Stepping into this backstory,
If you went to juvie and where you been?
Let's go. I mean, what's your name? What am I talking about? I ain't playing no games. Come take a shot with me. Listen, underdog. You're not gonna get on me.
I'm even remember my name.
I'm not gonna forget about you tonight. I don't get too drunk to forget about you. Don't make it up to you. Don't need to fight it.
Obviously, I don't know who, not obviously, maybe, I don't know who any of you men are, and that's okay. I go where the wind takes me, and that's okay. I love life because of that reason. I'm always open to I love to experience new things. I love to see where life can take me, simply. Also, to say that, I've also seen, now that...
Who the hell?
Who the hell cares? That's what I'm saying. So, that makes sense to exactly what I'm about to say. I see now that this show is to simply embarrass women, and that's fair. Everybody, you know, people enjoy. And that's completely fair. But
every day, I'm going to go get some money. Oh, it look like the window to heaven have been opened up.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. As
long as I can give an answer.
Yeah, how is this show to embarrass women when all I'm doing is asking questions about said behavior?
Because before you even got here, before you said anything, the minute they start asking body counts, this, that, and the third,
because of
I felt the energy. You can feel energy. Like I said from the beginning, no, everything is energy thing. Everything is energy thing.
Okay.
Nobody asks women what their body count is unless you're here to embarrass them. Simply.
Okay, well, it's a specific feeling.
This is not pregnant. This is not like you ask my body count.
Why is it out loud?
Yo, I just interrupt.
This next run is so personal. Not because of what I lost, but it's because of what I had to feel when I was leaving. There's a version of humiliation that doesn't have words for it. It's not failure, right? Failure is clean. It's a specific feeling of knowing that people who respected you are now watching you figure it out, of having to say things out loud that you never thought you'd say again, needing help from people that you used to help, and sitting in rooms that used to move through with confidence, and now feeling like a stranger in your own story. That's the part I want to talk about. Because money can come back. Businesses, they can be rebuilt. Relationships can be repaired. But that feeling, that voice, that look in the mirror, that one lives in the chest for a while. And you realize how far the gap is of who you said you are and who you actually are. That one takes long. I said it. I didn't skip it, didn't numb it, didn't try to make it look pretty, didn't make it look like I had something going on that I wasn't. I didn't perform through it. I just said it. And so I understood what it was trying to tell me. It was telling me that I got comfortable with who I was instead of committed to what I was supposed to become. So, to notice every mistake, every blind spot, every place I was too proud to see clearly, every person I trusted who showed me something I should have believed sooner by making those mistakes. And this run, I'm locked in. No distractions, no shortcut to what I was supposed to become. So, to notice what it was trying to tell me. It was telling me that I got comfortable with who I was instead of committed to what I was supposed to become. So, to notice every mistake, every blind spot, every place I was too proud to see clearly, every person I trusted who showed me something I should have believed sooner by making those mistakes. And this run, I'm locked in. No distractions, no shortcuts, no performing for people who went there when it was dark. Every lesson from that season is fuel now. Every scar is a reminder of exactly what I will not repeat. I'm just coming back. I'm coming out different than ever. It's fuel now. Every scar, no distractions, no shortcuts, no performing for people who went there when it was dark. Every lesson from that season is fuel now. Every scar is a reminder of exactly what I will not repeat. I'm just coming back. I'm coming out different than I've ever been. I'm not letting up until I get there. Yo, this next run.
I'm not saying that. That's real. If you have 100 million bodies, you should be proud. You should be proud of everything.
Why is absolute high? Oh, your body count is embarrassing.
No, I'm not. Because
Answer the question.
That was easy.
It's embarrassing. Don't be a hoe. Stop. All right? Close your legs.
This is what I'm saying. It's too embarrassing.
Hey, listen.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it.
It's embarrassing.
You're embarrassing.
Okay, so
This is embarrassing.
all right,
Absolutely, this might be embarrassing.
here's the thing. No one is trying to embarrass you if you say things that are foolish. Like, we're asking you questions, and then the only person that can really embarrass himself is you. Like, no one's embarrassing you.
But this is rage bait. That's the thing. I'm never the type of bitch to shut the fuck up. And you guys make me want to talk 24/7.
Hold on.
I did fall. Like I said, I didn't know what this was, bro. Like, y'all weird as fuck. Y'all weird as.
Hold on. How old are you? How old are you? You're an adult, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you can control yourself. Like, no one can rage bait you if you don't rage out. Yeah. Like, you're an adult. You're capable of controlling your emotions, right? We're not yelling at you. You've been yelling the entire time. So no one can embarrass you unless you embarrass yourself. So I don't
want to
understand.
fight you. Can we do that?
You want to fight me?
I want to fight you.
Catch me outside. How about that?
No, like, I swear to God. I swear to God.
Okay. You know, hold on. Let me just understand this. So you want?
Oh, low key, because I feel set up.
You want to? Hold on. So
Low key, I feel set up.
Hold on. No, Chris.
No, 100%.
Chris, let me understand this. So you're trying to engage in a physical confrontation with me?
Absolutely, I physically want to put my hands on you. Absolutely.
No, what the fuck?
Yeah, $50 for what? Oh, yeah. Alright, cool. Well, wait a minute. These niggas are behind, man, so I'm warning. Is that circle right there? Wait. Hold on. One problem at a time.
One more time, girl. One more time. Alright, so let's go OnlyFans first.
Alright.
Alright, there you go.
Well, that looked not clear.
Alright, so this is a link, apparently.
What? Shit.
Niggas. Got her, huh? Got her. Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
That looks so
Those are my pictures. Yeah, well, she wouldn't post that picture as the
She's trying to get engaged.
But there's no pictures there. There's no pictures.
She's trying to get engaged.
There's no picture. I'm engaged.
Alright, yep.
Alright.
Deny.
No. Oh my god, crazy.
Shit, one body count. Alright, next. Alright, Crush, go ahead. Crush, go ahead. Anything, Crush.
Maybe because it's time.
So, is it really you? Yeah, zero.
Be honest, be honest.
I don't have a OF.
Right.
I don't.
So someone just made a profile and stole your name and your pictures?
They must have.
I mean, deny.
No, I'm saying, I would say, if I said I tried to before, but I never really pulled the trigger. Did you make it
You made one in the past.
I tried to make one. I've never.
No, you tried. Did you make one, yes or no?
I didn't make one, no.
So someone made it for you?